Dilip, you may start now.
Okay. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, yes.
In my last lecture, I have, while doing Cauchy-Norrie theorem, I have used this finite birational plane projection of algebraic curves, and I want to complete that proof today. So, let me recall, these are the two pages which I again copied from the last lecture. So, this is the theorem that we want to prove. It is usually called a projection lemma. If you have a ideal A, which is pure one codimensional reduced ideal in a polynomial ring over a field, where K is a perfect field of characteristic P. That is, when the A is the intersection of the prime ideals P1 to PR, the codimension 1. I mean, the R by P has dimension 1. Then after a change of variables, we can when you contract back this ideal to the polynomial ring in two variables over K, then this extension is finite and birational. This is
Sir, sorry to interrupt. Can we do full screen?
sorry,
Can we do full screen and then proceed?
I am not able to hear. Shall I make it bigger?
Yeah, full screen.
Yeah,
Okay.
Full screen.
yes.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay. So I can make it full name. Okay, fine. So this is what I want to do today. But let me recall again birational definition. So if you have a ring extension of reduced Noetherian equidimensional rings, and if B is integral over A, and S is a non-derivative address of A, then S inverse A is the total quotient ring of A. S inverse B is also total quotient ring of B. Then we say that B is birational over A if these total quotient rings are isomorphic. This is equivalent to saying the associated primes of B to associated primes of A is contraction map is a bijection, and the quotient field of B by Q, where Q is associated prime of B, and quotient field of the contracted ideal, they are same, they are equal. Then one says that this is birational. Of course, when domain etc., then there is only simple that the quotient fields are isomorphic. Okay. Also, we say that B is separable over A if the quotient field of B by Q is a separable extension of the quotient field of A by the contraction of Q. This is for every associated prime of B. Then we say that it is separable. These terms I will be using in the lecture, so I don't. Okay. Now I will be using this lemma, which is called change of variables lemma, quite often in the next slides. So let me recall it without proof. If you have a polynomial ring over a field, and if you have a non-zero polynomial, then you can find integers R1 to Rn minus 1 such that the algebra automorphism defined by xi going to xi plus xn power Ri up to 1 to n minus 1, and xn is going to xn. This automorphism will make the given non-zero polynomial to be monic in xn and coefficients in the remaining variables. This is also used, I think this is called Nagata type of automorphism, and this is also used in the proof of normalization lemma. Actually, there is a more general version of this lemma, which is also called, which is also when the base, here the base ring is a field, but if the base ring is Noetherian ring, arbitrary Noetherian ring, then also such a lemma holds, but we don't need it in this lecture, therefore I didn't state it more carefully. This is also called Suslin's theorem. All right, so now let us start the proof. The proof I am giving is due to Balwant Singh which he has given this proof in the complete intersection school of NBHM in Bangalore, which was in 96. All right. So we have N is at least 2, A is a perfect field, and A is this reduced ideal. All heights are n minus 1, and therefore B by R by A, which is B, is reduced. Okay, we prove this assertion by induction on N. If N equal to 2, then there is nothing to prove. So assume N is at least 3, and let us denote small xi are the natural images of capital Xi in B. They are the residue classes mod the ideal A. Now, because this ideal A is non-zero, you choose a non-zero polynomial there, and you will change a variable lemma to assume that it is monic in Xn with coefficients in the remaining variables. Then this B is Bn minus 1 adjoined with Xn, where B is integral over Bn minus 1, where Bn minus 1 is polynomial in n minus 1 variables modulo the contracted ideal A. So now Bn minus 1 is also reduced, and dimension of Bn minus 1 equal to dimension B equal to 1 because it's integral extension. Therefore, by successive applications of change of variable lemma, we may assume that B is B3 adjoint variable x3 to xn, and B is integral over B3, where B3 is x1, x2, x3. This is usual that mod the ideal contracted ideal to the polynomial in 3 variables. Now, I am going to grant this lemma n equal to 3 for a moment, and that means I can change variables x1 to x1, x2, x3, and assume that B3 is integral and birational over this contracted ideal to the 2 variables x1, x2. This is, we are assuming the case for n equal to 3. Assuming for n equal to 3, I want to complete the proof and come back to the proof n equal to 3 later. So B is integral and birational over this, but this is equal to R prime mod contracted ideal to R prime A contracted ideal A to R prime, where R prime is x1, x2, x4 to xn. Now the assertion follows by induction, because the number of variables x3 is gone from here. So I just have to prove the case n equal to 3. All right, so it remains to prove the case n equal to 3. In this case, I want to change the notation by writing xyz for x1, x2, x3, and small yz, the natural images of capital Y and capital Z in B. Now B is quotient of the polynomial ring in 3 variables modulo the reduced ideal. So again, by change of variable lemma, we may assume that B is Cz and B is integral over C, where C is polynomial in 2 variable and modulo the contracted ideal from A. C is reduced because it is integral dimension C equal to dimension B equal to 1. Therefore, now this is a polynomial, this contracted ideal is an ideal in the polynomial in 2 variables, which is a UFD, and this A is reduced, and therefore because height 1 prime ideals in UFD are principal, therefore this contracted ideal is also principal because it is reduced. Now I want to use this lemma 2.2, which says we have this situation, polynomial in 2 variable, a polynomial there which is square free non-unit and see this residual algebra. Then after change of variables, I want to assume that C is Cx adjoint Y, where Y is the natural image of capital Y in C, and C is integral and separable over this. Now, I will use this lemma and complete the proof. And then we'll come back to the proof of lemma 2.2. So this 2.2, I have written the proofs here, but I'll come back to these pages later. All right, now continuing the proof of the projection lemma, we are in this situation. C is this, which is the residue class algebraic X mod F. This is, now F is monic in Y. So this is this. So C is integral and separable over X by the above lemma 2.2. Okay, here this is what I have used, the definition I gave in the beginning. This is separable. C is separable over this polynomial ring in one variable means what? That means the quotient field of any prime ideal P, when you take the quotient field of C by P, that should be separable algebraic over A by this. This is also field here because it's one variable. So that was the definition why I used this. So that is okay. So we are in this situation. Therefore, we are in again B is this, reduced dimension 1, A is this, equal to PRR prime ideals in three variables, height Pi equal to n minus 1, n is 2, 3, therefore this is 2. So Li, let us put Li are the quotient fields of these residue algebras by Pi. Then Li is because of the these Yi's and Zi's are the images of Y, Z in Li, and this E is a rational function field. Then this Li is generated over E by Yi, Zi. But this C is integral over this, and B is integral over. So this is the situation. Now, the Yi's are separable over E. That is what we are assuming here. In this lemma, we have assumed that it is separable. So now we can apply following standard lemma from field theory. It says that if you have a L over E algebraic field extension with infinity, and L is generated over E by two elements Y and Z, where Y is separable over E, then I can find infinitely many A such that L is this AY plus Z is a primitive element of this extension. This is the standard lemma from field theory, so I will assume it. I will not prove. So because of this lemma, I can find a finite subset Si of E. See, this is I am applying it to so this extension Li. So therefore, this Li is, these are the primitive elements, and that is true for outside Si. And I is 1 to R because these are so many prime ideals, and we are assuming to each one of the quotient field of R by Pi. All right. So in this, okay. So next one is lemma 4. Lemma 4 says 2.4. It says that if you have polynomial in three variables, and P1 to P2 are two prime ideals, such that the dimensions of R prime by P1 and R prime by P2 equal to 1, and these are integral over AX. And if P1 not equal to P2, then I can find infinitely many A's, so that P1 contracted to AX, AY plus Z, and P2 contracted to X plus AY plus Z. These are not equal. This is what I want is, I want to assume that when I contract these P1 to PR ideals, then the contraction to that, they still are different. So I have this 2.4 lemma is quite involved, and first I will complete the proof by assuming these 2.4 lemma. So I will jump the pages. All right. So by 2.4, I can find, given indices I and j, I not equal to j, I can find finite sets so that these contractions pi and pj to this ring, they are not equal whenever a is not in SIJ. Now you can put y prime equal to ay plus z. Y prime denote the natural images of y prime in V, Li respectively. Then we have already noted this Li is this, which is therefore generated by over E. This is the primitive element yi prime. And now it is easy, it's obvious that the map from associated primes of B to the associated primes of this ring, this is bijective because pi is going to pi contracted, and these are the associated primes because 0 is precisely the intersection of these prime ideals, and this is redundant prime decomposition because all pi's are of same height, and therefore this contraction, this is the primary decomposition. This means that this extension is birational. Therefore, we change y to y prime and get the theorem. So this left the proof that we have to prove lemma 2.2 and 2.4. So let me go back to my slides. I will first prove now 2.2. So that was page number 8. Yes. This is the lemma 2.2. I have polynomial ring in two variables, a polynomial there, and this is the residue class algebra mod F. Then I want to change the variable so that this y is in natural image of capital Y in C. It becomes integral and separable. All right. See, many of these proofs will work for general field also, but I have we have assumed that we want to prove it for characteristic P perfect field. All right. So for lemma 2.2. Again, this is the 2.1 is the change of variable lemma. I can make F monic in X. And because this F is arbitrary polynomial, it has a prime factorization, irreducible factors, but they are, because F is, we are assuming that F is reduced. Therefore, these are square free, that means no repeated factor there. So I will assume each Fi is monic in X by applying the change of variable lemma, and therefore I will apply all of them monic in Xi repeatedly. So replacing X by X plus Y power M for sufficiently large M, and also I will choose this M so that it is not divisible by the characteristic K. And now I use this lemma. Now I can assume, that means I can assume in 2.2, F is irreducible polynomial which is monic in X. And we have this residual algebra, Y is the natural image. Then C is, instead of X, I will write X plus Y power M. And then this F has become monic in Y, or monic in X. So therefore, C is integral and separable over this. So for all sufficiently large M and not divisible by the characteristic. So this is the lemma. I have to prove this. All right. So proof of 2.1. So I make the change x plus y power m, x going to x plus y power m, and y is going to y. So then this polynomial f becomes this polynomial, which is monic in y. Further, we have a chain rule. When you use the chain rule for differentiation for this polynomial fm, partial derivative with respect to y is, you have to differentiate this, that is m y power m df by dx, you have substituted this, plus df by dy, and then you don't have to, because this is differentiated. So let's see, note the difference between this and this. This is the partial derivative taken and then substituted these variables. Here it is a partial derivative of this polynomial. All right. So if I consider two cases, if this df by dy is non-zero, if this is non-zero, then you can find an integer m0 such that this df by dy, it belongs to the ideal. It doesn't belong to the ideal y power m naught, and hence this one cannot belong to y power m for all m. This is not here. Therefore, it cannot be in the bigger ones also. So therefore, from the star, it follows that this is my cursor. So this one is non-zero if m is not divisible by the characteristic and m is sufficiently large. That follows from this, and what we have observed here, that this cannot belong to the higher powers. On the other hand, if this is zero, this was the case when this partial derivative of f is equal to y naught. If this is zero, then df by dx is not zero by the following lemma, which is easy from the fact that characteristic p doesn't divide m. That anyway, I have written the proof. This is a polynomial ring in two variables, perfect field, characteristic p. This is irreducible. Then one of the derivative is one of the partial derivative is non-zero. If both are zero, then because the characteristic is p, f will be g power p for some g, and that will contradict the irreducibility of g, because we are assuming characteristic is positive. In characteristic 0, we don't need this because that is obvious there. All right, so that proves this lemma 2.21, and therefore it finishes the proof of lemma 2.2. Now I will have to go to proof of lemma 2.4, which is on page 14. This 2.3 lemma, I am not proving. It is a standard field theory argument which everybody knows. 2.4 is, now we have three variable polynomial, two prime ideals. Their heights, dimensions are 1, and they're not equal to, they are different. Then I want to find some a, infinitely many, so that when I contract this p1 to this is a new change of variable ring, then they are different for all but finitely many a. So that means for infinitely many a, because this is a polynomial ring in one variable over a field, even if k is finite, there will be infinitely many. All right. So proof of lemma 2.4. In fact, this 2.4 is the most important step in this proof, as you can see. Okay, so recall the notation. R prime is this three variable polynomial ring over a field K, P1, P2, different prime ideals, dimension R by P1, R, this is R prime here. They are 1, and this is integral over this, that we know. Xi, Yi, Zi denote the natural images of X, Y, Z in this residue class ring of R prime by Pi. Ei is the K adjoint Xi, and I am fixing the algebraic closure of EI, which is EI bar. And note that from earlier notation and what we have observations, this quotient field is algebraic over this, and quotient field is generated over K by Yi Zi, and this E1 is Kx1, K small x1, this is K small x2, and this x1 to x2 is a K isomorphism. In fact, this x1 is a variable only, it's a transcendental element because it's that is what our setup from here. This is R prime by Pi, this is precisely this. So when you go to quotient field level, it is algebraic. Okay, and now this K isomorphism of this field E1 to E2, that I can extend to this E1 bar. This is E1 bar, theta bar, E1 bar to E2 bar, and I want to choose this is algebraic closure. Therefore, both these quotient fields will be contained in the respective EIs. So I will fix an embedding from this to this, and eta I will compose these projection maps. This is the residue class map, and this is containing EI and R prime. This is eta L map. And now, for convenience, I drew the commutative diagram, which is we have got all from this notation and this. See here, E1, E2, this theta is the K isomorphism from x1 going to x2. x1, x2, in fact, they are transcendental elements. So these are rational function fields. These are extended here. And now this E1, this one is generated by Y1, Z1, and this one is generated by Y2, Z2. And I take the map. I look at the theta bar, which is isomorphism of this field, which is extended from this K isomorphism. So Y1's image, I am putting it to be Y prime, and Z1 image is Z prime. And now here we note some standard field theory is used, which everybody knows. So these are the embeddings of this field, E2 adjoined with Y prime Z prime to E2 bar or E2. E2 is this. E2 is this. And this is E2 bar. So I take the embedding of this is one embedding which you have fixed, and the other embeddings we have this, and we know that this embedding, the number of embeddings is finite because this field is algebraic and standard thing. So each one of these embedding, I will extend it to the E2 automorphism, which I call it sigma bar of E2 bar. That means this is an element in the Galois group, absolute Galois group of E2 bar over E2. In next, yes,
Dilip,
yeah.
Dilip, can you use a cursor to indicate which embeddings you are talking about? There are too many embeddings here.
Yeah, 1 minute. I will try to find where is the cursor. Okay. Here. Here.
Yeah.
So this is E2,
Yeah.
and this is E2 bar, and I'm considering this is one embedding fix. Then the other embedding, the set of embeddings, E2 embedding from this field to E2 bar. That I am denoting by the script T, and this set, this is precisely home E2 algebra homomorphisms of this field to closure. And this the number of embedding is finite because this is algebraic extension of E2. Now, to each embedding, I can extend it to the automorphism of this E2 bar. That is because this is the normality of E2 bar. So that means we have a map from E to Galois group of E2 bar over E2. This is sigma going to sigma bar. I will come back to this page if necessary, if somebody has question on the following pages. Okay, now we claim that if I have any embedding sigma in E, then this pair sigma y prime and sigma z prime, they are not equal to y2, z2 for every sigma in E. So let me remind you, y prime is the image of y1 under theta bar, z prime is the image of z1 under theta bar, and this field is generated by y2, z2. Right? So that is the claim. Y prime, z prime, the sigma evaluated at y prime and sigma evaluated at z prime, this pair is not equal to y2, z2 for every sigma in E. Now, why that? Is very simple. Suppose both these pairs are equal for some sigma in E. Then, if you see this commutative diagram, this will mean that this is theta bar, this is E2. So this will mean that E2, eta 2 is this composition is eta 2. This E2, eta 2 is going the other way. That is sigma bar, theta bar, theta 1. So that is, this is eta 1 and then theta bar, and then you have to compose with that sigma bar, the embedding. If these are equal, that will mean that these two automorphisms are same. Not automorphism, they are maps from, these are maps from R to E2 bar. R to E2 bar. But then, what will be the kernel of eta 2? Kernel of eta 2 is precisely the P1, P2. P1. Kernel of eta 2 is P2, which is kernel of this composition, but these guys are injective. So therefore, that is the kernel of eta 1, which is P1. So then P1 will become P2, but our assumption is P1 is not equal to P2. Therefore, these pairs are different for all sigma in the embeddings. Remember, we want to do what? We want to find A. So I will recall what. We want to find A, many A's, so that these contracted prime ideals are not equal. That is our aim. All right. So can I go on? Hello? Hello?
Yes, please.
Okay. Now I define the set S. This is a union running over all these embeddings. These are the rational functions. So that AX2 and the difference of this sigma y1 or sigma y prime minus y2 equal to the difference of this z2 minus sigma z prime. This is a set S. First of all, this set is a finite set. That is clear from this claim, because this is it's easy to see it is finite from this thing. It's obvious more or less. If these are equal, then this side is nothing to do with this, and therefore it will be equal. But that cannot happen for any sigma in E. And also we have to note that AX2 is like a rational function only, because X2 is a transcendental element. All right, so S is this set. So I caught hold of this set S, which is a finite set. And this is a finite subset of the rational function field in one variable, which is infinite. So therefore, for any element outside S, I will show that this contracted ideal to the change of variables, that will be still different. And we will be done there. All right, so this is again little bit argument is needed. So take any A outside S. This is a polynomial and outside S. Take any such A. Then by definition of S, we have, it's not there. That means these elements are not equal. So that's what I've written here. Rearrange them. And also we have to note that this sigma is E2 embedding. That means this can go inside. This guy can go inside sigma. So that is what I've written. So this is this side. I've brought this to this side, and this I push to that side, and then that is A2, Y2. This is gone to the other side, and plus Z. So these elements are not equal for every embedding. But what does that mean? That means these two elements, they cannot be conjugates over E2, because if they are conjugates over E2, that means one will be sigma of the other, where sigma is the E2 embedding of E2 bar. But we are, because of this 4, that is not the case. We have chosen A like that. Therefore, they are not E2 conjugates. That means they are not E2 conjugates, means that these two elements have distinct minimal polynomials over E2. Because conjugate means they have the same minimal polynomial over E2. So they are different conjugates. Therefore, the minimal polynomials of these two elements are different. Now use this commutative diagram. Use this commutative diagram and note that this ideal Pi, when I contract to this, it is generated by Fi. It's a principal ideal. See, that follows also from this commutative diagram, because this one will be this, and then the kernel. So this is one of the element, and then therefore the kernel of this map will be precisely the principal ideal generated by the minimal polynomial of this. Similarly for P1. So that's what I've written. So this is a principal ideal generated by some polynomial in x and this variable, where Fi xt is a unique minimal polynomial in T, such that when I substitute capital X equal to xi, then this is a minimal monic polynomial of this element over Ei. Now I apply theta bar to this. Then F1 x2 T, this is a minimal polynomial of this over this. Therefore, by what we have noted above, these two polynomials are not equal, because they are the minimal polynomials. So therefore, if these two are not equal, that means these are not equal. These polynomials are not equal. X2 is a variable only. X2 is like a transcendental element only. So therefore, these polynomials are not equal. But these ideals are generated by these two polynomials. These ideal is generated by this polynomial, and this one is generated by this polynomial. Therefore, the ideals are also not equal. So that finishes the proof of 2.4, and we are done. I hope it was not too fast. But anyway, all the arguments are written up. So I will still would be happy to answer questions if anybody has questions. And also, before I answer the question, I also wanted to give references. For my first lecture, I mainly use two references besides the paper of Kaushik Mori and Mo's preprint, and the book by Poons, and the book by Ravi Rao and Ishbek. That is a good number of statements which I found. And even these proofs, the detail of proof is also there, but it is proof is sketchy, so I made it more detailed. That's what I did. Okay, so with this I will stop, and I will be happy to answer the questions.
Yeah, so we can allow audience to open their mic and ask questions now.
So Dilip, where exactly did he use the characteristic is positive?
Characteristic positive, I use it many times.
No, so in the lemma 2.2, is that the one?
And also, because I keep lemma 2.2, for example, also I'm
In the,
why
in the first talk you use characteristic P.
first talk I use also
Stuff you have used it. But
sometimes.
today's, I was wondering, only lemma 2.2 seems to be perhaps, even that, not seriously maybe.
Lemma 2.2, yes. And for characteristic 0, it will be easy, lemma 2.2 also. So many of these proofs will work for arbitrary characteristic.
So that's what I thought, that today's proofs seem to be.
This theorem particularly, but the last lecture for Kaushik Nori, it was precious.
So is this, Dilip, is this right that the original paper of Kaushik Nori, which was just 4 pages long,
Yes.
did not have the proof of projection lemma?
I don't know that because I tried to read the proof, but it was a little bit difficult for me because it is written, first of all, it is written there for algebraic case.
Yeah.
And then there is a, maybe it was standard for literature,
Well,
but I didn't find it anywhere.
Yeah, Kaushik is in audience. I invite him to give his remarks about where, what are the crucial places where characteristic P is used. Yeah, I think his mic is off.
You can put it on. You can do that, no?
No, only he can put it on.
Okay, fine.
We can mute it, but cannot unmute it.
Or maybe move on.
Yeah. Mohan, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. So Kapil raised the question about the crucial role played by characteristic P in this proof.
Characteristic P in most of these games only play one role, and that is you can use your binomial theorem well, right?
Yes.
When you take a power, the things distribute beautifully. And that's the only real point it can use. And I don't,
This one.
obviously close field, then it'll become a little bit. Good to paper is so short, it's much easier to read it than explaining on, locally. It is just, that's the only crucial point. You will see that you take, 3 elements creating some material, and when you want to do something with it, you can take, when you take P power, things become the equations become much simpler. And that's the only place it's used. If you want, Dilip, of course, is doing the much more general thing of doing, bunch of prime ideals, many curves are put together, etc. In my lecture, I will explain it's not really necessary. Union of theoretic computation is automatically a theoretic. So you can always restrict your attention to an integral idea.
Yeah.
And then some of the arguments become a little simpler.
Yeah. So I was just, Mohan, I was just checking references that 1978 was an important year for affine geometry in TIFR.
Yes.
Because this paper, Kaushik Nori paper, came out in 78, and I think your solution to Heisenberg-Evans conjecture was also around that time.
Right. Yeah.
So, once I was in a conference with Heisenberg in Lumini,
Mhm.
and we were, they have this Wednesday afternoon long walk of some 15 kilometers.
Okay.
And then I was walking with Eisenberg, and he asked me that uh, who is the father of affine geometry in TIFR?
Ah, ah, ah. That's
So,
an interesting question. Yes.
yeah, so I said, I really don't know, but it must have started with Seshadri's solution of Quillen-Hussain. I mean, the conjecture about projective modules.
Mhm.
And then it sort of continued from
Ah,
there. And yeah,
ah,
so, but many people contributed to affine geometry, and it's a, I don't think anybody from outside came and started this trend.
No, I mean, of course, I mean, predictive modules, BAS used to come so regularly to Tata Institute. So predictive modules, obviously,
But Seshadri's theorem was much before he started coming.
Oh, yeah, much before. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Keshadri's theorem was probably the, I mean, anyway, I mean, we are talking about ancient stories now, but yeah.
Yeah, since you are there and Kaushik is also there, this occurred to me that this conversation I had with Eisenberg.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, Seshadri, after Seshadri's theorem, I mean, the algebra school became kind of different, right? I mean, there were almost all quote unquote algebra students were from Sridharan's side, right?
Right.
In Jyotilingam, who is at the meeting today, I can see, and people like that. And so,
Yeah. So, but Jyotirlingam was also doing commutative algebra, although he might have been student of Sridhar.
oh yes, absolutely fantastic theorem those days. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But he was not doing affine geometry. He was doing more local algebra in some sense, right? I mean,
Right. More homological side.
Right, and things like
PCDs
that.
and regular
Yeah.
local rings and.
Anyway, he can speak for himself. He's in the audience.
Exactly. Jyotirlingam, are you listening to these conversations?
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I mean, Jyotirlingam must be the senior most person in the audience here, right?
I would imagine. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know everybody in the audience, but yes, Jyotirlingam. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't see any questions in the chat. Dilip, thank you very much for taking so much care in writing this proof, and I hope you will give us the file of last week's file. We already transmitted, but we would like to.
This one is already given.
Yeah,
I've already given to you.
Yeah. So, this is one of the most important theorems in commutative algebra and algebraic geometry, and many young people may want to carefully go through this. So, you'll appreciate if you can give these notes. Yeah. Okay, so we thank you very much. And
I thank you for listening to me patiently.
Yes. So, we will meet on Monday. That's an unusual day for us. There is no seminar on Tuesday. We meet on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday next week. On Monday, we have lecture by Mohan Kumar on the theorem that Dilip has left unproved. But of course, there will be much more in his talk. Then on Wednesday, we have a lecture on F-rational rings by Mitra Kole. And then on Friday, we have talk by Anurag Singh from Salt Lake City. Okay. So with that, we can end today's session, and thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.